Whereas the first series was like a treasure hunt, its follow-up series is more akin to a heist movie. Instead of using their smarts to solve clues, they'll need to use their cunning to commit crimes. I am Jan, welcome to my chan where we discuss books I read growing up and revisit them as an adult. This is an adult channel meant for adult viewers. Now let's dive into this recap. It's been 2 years since the end of the clue hunt, since Amy and Dan had their first encounter with the Vespers, and now they've returned. Something is going down as the Cahills will need to work together to save their family and possibly the world. At exactly the same time, 7 Cahills are kidnapped from around the world. In California, Fisk Cahill is bitten by a venomous snake while enjoying a mineral bath. 2 men take him afterward, administering antivenom. In Ponce, Puerto Rico, while out training, Regenholt is chased by a hammerhead and rescued by sailors, only for them to point a gun at her. Natalie Cabrera is out shopping in London at Harrods when she spots a sign for AIDS Works Wonder, her mother's organization. Isabel started the nonprofit as a way to get out of jail. Natalie goes to try on clothes in the fitting room, and before she knows it, she's already being kidnapped, and her screams go unheard. In Paris, Nellie Gomez is enjoying a croissant when powder erupts, rendering her unconscious. She is wheeled away by medical personnel imposters. In Tel Aviv, Alistair O is with Ned and Ted Starling. They're taking an elevator to see a neurologist who might be able to help the brothers, but suddenly the elevator stops and plunges to the ground floor, stopping before reaching terminal velocity. When the doors open, 3 men try to grab them, but Alistair gives Ned and Ted a chance to run. They do, with Ned guiding Ted, but Ted is captured, and Alistair yells for Ned to call William McIntyre. He does, leaving his brother behind. And in Tokyo, Japan, Jonah Wizard's cousin, Phoenix, is amongst a crowd of Jonah's fans. He's there to try and find his inner rhythm. The press of the crowd pushes him out of the concert, where 2 men chloroform and capture him.
What the what?
In Boston, 13-year-old Dan is busy climbing a tree to spy on his 16-year-old sister and her boyfriend, Evan Tolliver, a tech nerd from her school. When Saladin climbs on the branch Dan is on, it breaks, dropping him in front of Amy. He makes a quick excuse and Amy climbs the tree to retrieve Saladin. Dan notes how easily she climbs, remembering how much she has trained since her encounter with Casper Wyoming and Bruno years ago. She has grown from a shy, timid 13-year-old into an athlete.
You know what that is? It's gross.
Dan doesn't tell Amy how bored he's been lately, finding himself missing the clue hunt. He's been plagued by PTSD and been feeling like something is missing in his life.
Something's missing.
Sinead Starling, now residing in their guest house, pulls up on an ATV to let them know the bus is running early. Since joining Amy's training, the two have grown close. The bus pulls up and Evan takes Amy's hand, reminding Dan how lonely he's been feeling lately. At exactly the same time as the Cahill kidnappings, a cement truck hits the school bus Dan, Evan, and Amy are on. The tanker truck ahead of them puts on the brakes, forcing the bus to stop. Everyone is evacuated from the bus as Amy notices that the cement truck driver is wearing a ski mask and looking right at her. She realizes it's happening, exactly what she's been training for the last 2 years. She's shocked but not surprised. When one of the men pulls out a gun, Amy kicks it out of his hand. She uses her martial arts training to hold off the attackers until Dan sprays them with gasoline from the tanker truck and threatens to burn them alive. This is enough to cause the men to run off into the woods. As the police arrive, they agree not to tell the truth. Cahill business is for Cahills only. Amy thinks about how all of this tragedy goes back to the 39 clues and the master serum that gives incredible power. The kids are driven home by the police, where they see McIntyre's cars waiting. He informs them about the disappearance of Natalie, Fisk, Phoenix, and Reagan. Sinead bursts in at the same moment to announce that Alistair and Ted were kidnapped. Together, they also learn that Nellie was kidnapped too. Then, a helicopter drops a package on their lawn. It's a phone, but there's no brand name nor model number, thus no way to trace it. That's when they get a text message from Vesper 1, telling them to go to Florence. or else they'll kill a hostage. Dan and Amy, of course, agree to go, but Mr. McIntyre says they have to quell the rest of the family first because they're the head of the family since they won the clue hunt. But the family isn't so easy to quell in the command center that Amy has set up. So she has to lay out her plans in front of them, saying that her and Dan will go to Italy while Sinead and Ian stay back and try to find out anything they can in the command center. Ian Cabral heads out immediately to catch a flight to Boston. He's in a taxi when he decides to call his mother to see if she can help in any way because she's so powerful, but she just belittles him and hangs up on him, leaving him in fucking tears. Amy and Dan are loading their luggage and saying goodbye. Sinead gives them a lollipop smoke bomb that she developed. And then they get into the car, and Amy just thinks about how Dan has no friends anymore. He only has one friend, this 11-year-old named Atticus Rosenblum, and that kid lost his mother and lives with his father and his half brother Jake. As they pull away, they almost hit Evan with their car, who was going to check on Amy because he's been so worried about her. But, like, dude, it's been less than 12 hours since the incident. Can you not give her any fucking space? Nellie awakens in the hostage room with the other hostages just as they drop off Phoenix into the room. And she has her suspicions that it's the Vespers. She conveys this to Fisk with a look, but they don't really say anything at first. Amy and Dan fly first class to Florence, but when they stop in Zurich, Switzerland, they're sent a message from the Vesper phone, a photo of the hostages. Dan sends it to Sinead, hoping they can analyze it for any information. This is when Amy pulls out Grace's old notebook. It was the only thing to survive the fire at the mansion, and in it she finds a possible clue regarding the Vespers. She also mentions how the Vespers are controlled by a council of 6. They get another text message from Vesper 1 once they arrive at their hotel in Florence. They want Amy and Dan to steal a Caravaggio painting called Medusa, located at the Uffizi Gallery. Amy and Dan do some reconnaissance at the gallery, taking note of the security measures before Amy calls in backup. Jonah Wizard and Hamilton Holt arrive in Florence. The Janus have recreated copies of the Medusa, and the boys have also brought the tools Amy requested for the planned robbery. Hamilton is told to cut a slot in the window opposite the Caravaggio, but later when they try to steal it, the hole is too narrow and Amy breaks the window to get the painting out. She leaves behind 3 forgeries of the Medusa. Dan is below and catches the painting, hiding it in a pizza box amongst a stack of real pizzas. As the alarm blares and police draw near, Dan is able to get away on a bike and hand off the pizza box to Jonah, who is waiting on a boat on the river Arno. As Amy and Hamilton are finally released from the museum, Ham is disgusted that Amy would say he's her boyfriend, mentioning that they're related. And it's just like, finally, somebody with some sense. They all meet up at the hotel suite where Amy is trying to lie to her boyfriend over the phone. He was arrested while trespassing on her property. Again, dude, back off. When they get a new message from Vesper 1, he orders them to bring the painting to the Medici crypt at the San Lorenzo Basilica the next day. As the 4 of them head to the basilica, they're robbed by a gang of bikers, and it isn't until after that they learn that this was the actual drop-off. With the biker, it's revealed to be Casper Wyoming, who learns that the painting is a fake and tells the other biker that there will be consequences. The punishment is that one of the jailers shoots Nellie in the shoulder. Vesper 1 sends them the footage telling them that she is still alive for now. Amy says they need to find the real Caravaggio, and they need to begin at the library to do some research.
I must do research.
With the prisoners, the Vespers don't offer any medical assistance to Nellie, only Tylenol. Ian and Sinead update Dan on what they found, a shirt tag that may be able to clue them in on the Vespers. Dan hangs up. He's busy slowly amassing the 39 clues to recreate Gideon's serum. In the library, Amy is reading the latest texts from the Vespers, who've given them a 4-day deadline. Hamilton is the one who gives her the idea of the Mud Angels, who saved many artworks during the 1966 flood of Florence. She notes that that is when the Medusa must have been stolen. The 4 Cahills are heading to the airport, but a crowd stand between them and the secure fax machine on board Jonah's plane. They were sent classified Janet's information on the Mud Angels. Jonah sends Hamilton out as a double to lure the crowd away so he can get to the plans. Poor Ham. Thankfully, he is a resilient Tomas. While combing the files, they turn up a Gregor Tobin, a mud angel who is presumed dead, but also went by the alias A. Sudem, which is Medusa backwards. They hatch a plan to get Alberto to invite them to his home in Milan by trying to entice him with the Saket statue, claiming to want his expert opinion on it. As they perform some recon around Lake Como, when they spot a statue of Pliny the Younger, Amy realizes that Grace was describing the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, and somehow it's connected to the Vespers. They're invited by Tobin and offered to sell the Saket. He gives them a tour of his gallery, but they don't see the Medusa. Dan does notice that there are two thermostats for a single room. They spot a Renoir that is about the right size for a secret door. Amy uses Sinead's lollipop smoke bomb to cause a distraction as they break into a secret second gallery behind the Renoir. Inside, they find a Medusa and use a Roman chariot to break a window to escape. They begin rock climbing down towards the boat where Jonah and Hamilton are waiting. Dan reaches the boat first, and Amy jumps the last few feet into Hamilton's arms. As they speed away, Tobin is chasing them in his speedboat and shooting at them with a rifle. Dan takes control of the boat and crashes them on shore. They barely survive, but Amy was able to keep the painting safe. Tobin assumes they're dead, and the Medusa must have been destroyed in the crash. Afterwards, Amy realized she lost the charger for the Vesper phone, so she messages Sinead to try and see if she can whip something up. So she sends Ian out to the store, who runs into Evan at the store, and he knows about the Diazi phone, so he kind of fills him in on the Cahill stuff going on. Back in Jonah's plane, Dan is looking at the Medusa, wondering how the Vespers knew that it was a fake. He examines the back of it and notices a message etched into it. They're not sure what to make of it, so they send it to Dan's friend Atticus. Amy gets a call from Evan inside the comm center. Ian cuts in that he knows all about the Cahill business at this point. They only let him in because he knew something about the Vesper phone. None of the Cahill connections had the security clearance to help them. Jonah and Hamilton were to return back to check out the Diassi facility and find any useful information. Atticus calls Dan, and he tells him the word puzzle is related to the Roman Colosseum, which is coincidentally where the Rosenblums are. The message was about the Gate of Life, where surviving gladiators exited the Colosseum. Amy has Jonah drop them off in Rome. Our hostages are watching over Nellie, who is in incredible pain. So Fisk tries a desperate attempt to ask the captors if they can offer any assistance. They send down medical instruments for them to remove the bullet themselves. Atticus and his 18-year-old brother Jake are heading back to the Colosseum. Jake is a bit of a jerk towards Dan for no reason, mocking Atticus. Apparently, Atticus is only friends with Dan because his mother's last word spoken to him was Cahill. Atticus goes to call Dan, but he hears his phone and his voice coming from behind him. He gives Dan and Amy a tour of the Colosseum, telling them about the history of it. Jake notes his disapproval. Dude, let Atticus be a kid. Just because he's a genius doesn't mean that he has to live up to these unrealistic expectations. Dan points out that the passageways of the Colosseum matched up with the Medusa. It's not just a painting, it's a map. The Rosenblums take the Cahills down to the ancient tunnels. Jake tries talking more shit, and Amy defends Dan, asserting that they can't get lost because he has a photographic memory. Dan leads the way toward a spot he believes the Medusa was pointing towards. The Cahills leaving behind an arguing pair of Rosenblums. They find the intersection marked on the map and begin searching for a clue. They find an old shield hidden away. Amy believes it's the original shield made by Leonardo da Vinci. They also find an old book written in an unknown language. When Atticus rounds a corner, he tells them that Jake snitched on them to security. He spots the manuscript, which he says is called Il Million, and recognizes it as a book about Marco Polo's travels written in Old French. He points out the epilogue, which wasn't in any other version he's read. Dan takes it, and the Cahills run as security closes in. Jake grabs Dan, which pisses me off. Like, Jake, you are an 18-year-old assaulting a 13-year-old. Leave him alone. Anyway, Amy kicks his ass to free Dan, and the Cahills run. The Cahills give the security guards the slip in the tunnels, hoping to find a secret exit somewhere. Dan wonders what Vesper 1 wanted with Marco Polo, but Amy points out maybe Damien Vesper wasn't interested in something new like the serum, but something even older. Eventually, the tunnel exits into the Lupercal, the legendary grotto where Rome's founders were raised by Lupa the wolf. This still counts as desecrating a preserved historical site, of course. They're able to climb out of the hole in the ceiling, surprising two scientists before running off down Palatine Hill.
Surprise, surprise.
They take a taxi to Florence while listening to Atticus's voicemails telling them they're wanted by Interpol. Amy gives the driver an extra couple of hundred to step on it. Without hostages, they're going to have Phoenix Wizard perform the operation as he has the steadiest hands. He isn't able to grab the bullet with tweezers though, so they have Natalie do it, which she is successful at as Nellie is awake the entire process.
Jesus Christ.
Ian, Sinead, Hamilton, and Jonah are arriving in the Diossi factory and find it abandoned. They don't turn up much, but they do get some extra phone chargers. When they're leaving, explosions rock the building and flames begin to engulf it. A burnt piece of paper turns up as Ian's feet. It bears the Lucian crest on it, which he hides from the others. Amy and Dan, at a hotel in Florence, are updated about the Diossi mission before getting a text from Vesper 1 to meet at the circus for the drop-off. It's there that a trapeze artist takes the Medusa off their hands. After a blackout disrupts the circus, Amy and Dan make their escape, where they find the trapeze artist dying outside. All she mentions is something about a burn before she's gone. They get a text from Vesper 1 telling them their next task is in Switzerland, but they don't release any of the hostages. We get a glimpse of Vesper 1 as he is driving a taxi, feeling the burn scar on his arm as he thinks about the Medusa in the back seat. And that's where we leave the Cahills for now. All the hostages still being held by the Vespers, and Vesper 1 hiding in plain sight. Every Cahill is on the case. Dan and Amy are wanted by Interpol. Amy's clinging boyfriend is in on the secret, and Dan's friend Atticus thinks he's a thief. But that's all for now. Let's uncover more secrets in the follow-up, A King's Ransom. Don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comment section below, and subscribe to my channel. Bye!
Bye!